This is the final session of a several-part series. And as with each of the other times we've done this, there's some people who have not been here for any of the other parts. So I'll give a little summary, background. We've been discussing a book written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur called Madhurya Kadambini. Madhurya Kadambini means, a translation is a cloud bank of nectar, sending showers of nectar, one after the next, after the next. So that's what he's using as chapter titles. First shower, second shower, from the cloud bank of nectar. And it's a summary description of the stages of bhakti. And bhakti was the main subject matter that was written about by one of our great acharyas named Rupa Goswami. Do you know who is Rupa Goswami? You know who is Lord Chaitanya? You know who is Krishna? Good. Okay. It's a good start. Okay. So the devotee of Krishna who inaugurated the chanting of this Hare Krishna mantra was Lord Chaitanya. And he was kind of more than a devotee. He was Krishna himself coming to teach how to live one's life in full surrender to Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches the concluding instruction, the many teachings and instructions given by Krishna, the very last one. All other things that I've taught you, they're secondary to this one final instruction. Surrender to Krishna. Everything else is secondary. That's numero uno. Surrender to Krishna. So Krishna considered, who's going to understand how to do this? I'll come and teach it myself. How to? Surrender to Krishna. And along with that, he gave the chanting of the holy name, this Hare Krishna Mahamantra that you saw these devotees jumping up and down and running around and going crazy in happiness chanting Hare Krishna. So Lord Chaitanya gave that, the means of achieving spiritual perfection in our present age of quarrel. So glorification, singing and praising, hallowing God's name, right? Hallowing God's name. He taught that. And the whole of the process of once you surrender to Krishna, or as you surrender to Krishna, you serve him lovingly. So he taught that to one of his very close associates, whose name was Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami then lived in the place of Krishna's appearance in pastimes in Vrindavan. You've heard of Vrindavan? Vrindavan. Vrindavan. One day may you go there. The devotee that led the kirtan, that's one of his favorite places. You felt like he was really happy, right? That's a Vrindavan happiness he brought back with him. He was just in Vrindavan for 6 months. That's Vrindavan. Okay? So Rupa Goswami lived there and wrote literatures describing bhakti, the science of devotion to the Supreme, to Krishna, just as he heard it from Lord Chaitanya, who was Krishna teaching how to surrender to Krishna. Then several generations passed. A few centuries passed. actually. And the devotee who's pictured here, he also moved to Vrindavan, and he studied under one of the most wonderful of teachers you could possibly imagine, great devotee of Lord Chaitanya and Krishna, and he learned about the teachings of Rupa Goswami. So he wrote this little book on a little synopsis, little summary of the stages of bhakti, that as somebody that's just an ordinary fellow somehow begins bhakti, and he explains how that begins. That's the first chapter, how bhakti begins. In short, bhakti is caused or created by bhakti. Really simple. Someone that's carrying bhakti in their bhakti vessel, they bump into somebody and spill some on them. That's how it happens. The heart is the bhakti vessel. Someone that's carrying bhakti can pass it on to others. In fact, he explains that Krishna gives power of attorney. You've heard that term before, power of attorney? He gives power of attorney to his devotee, like these fellows over here. Some of those ladies over there too. Krishna gives power of attorney. Says, you can give me to whoever you like. And so they do. And some people say yes. Some people say no. Some people say, let me think about it. But some people say yes. And that person that says yes receives bhakti. That's how bhakti begins. That's chapter 1. I'm making it really simple. And then there's chapter 2. And in chapter 2, he describes once bhakti is there, it comes as a seed. And you have to fructify the seed, otherwise it'll just sit there dormant for a whole bunch of time. And the watering of the seed, or the sprouting of the seed, comes from hearing and chanting and hearing and chanting and hearing and chanting, and whoop, the seed sprouts into this little shoot that comes out with 2 leaves. That's how it starts. So he describes what I'm saying, that the beginning of bhakti is these 2 things, these 2 leaves that represent eradication of sufferings, material sufferings, diminishes them, eventually eliminates them. Just even in the beginning stages, there's a Sanskrit term, kleshagni. And then auspiciousness in one's life just starts. It's miraculous, but it's predictable too. Shubha, da. Auspiciousness begins to happen in one's life. And this is transcendental kind of auspiciousness, not like you win the lottery or your mother doesn't die or something like that. You know, it's transcendental auspiciousness begins to awaken in one's life. And so he discusses in that first chapter that sprouting of the seed of bhakti, and then it grows. So it begins through the association. The second stage is what's happening right now, association of others who are carrying bhakti in their bhakti vessel, and they bump into each other a bunch and share their devotion with one another. And then they engage in the activities that devotees do together, hearing and chanting about Krishna. So in that medium, in that atmosphere, it's like the incubation chamber for the creeper, the little sprouting bhakti plant or bhakti creeper. And that's chapter 1. Chapter 2. Chapter 1. Yeah. Anyway. Chapter 3 is the effect of removal of unwanted things in the heart and how that happens. in stages, things to be avoided that don't make more of it happen. And then the next chapter is becoming steady, going from unsteady. You know what a sine curve is? That's a sine curve. Bhakti in the beginning is like a sine curve. So how to eliminate that unsteadiness is taking things from the heart that are impure, and as the heart becomes pure, comes steadiness. So he discusses that in the next chapter. And then yesterday evening we discussed what comes after that. There's a taste for the activities of devotion. And then following that, there's an attachment for the object of devotion. The object of devotion is Krishna. So what's that like? We discussed that yesterday evening. We're almost done. That's where we ended up. The last two stages, you have to get your binoculars out. It's really up there. So what can I do? That's what our topic is this evening. You're new. So fasten your seatbelt. We're going to be discussing the final two stages of the 9 stages of bhakti. Final 2 stages are called ecstasy, and that's like the spiritual conception of ecstasy, not a drug or some other kind of ecstasy. It's the natural position of the soul is to be ecstatic. The ecstasy is because of contact with the supreme reservoir of all pleasure. In fact, in the mantra that we chant, this Hare Krishna mantra, there's 3 words, Hare and Krishna and Rama. Rama means the reservoir of pleasure. So when one spiritually connects with the reservoir of all pleasure, one experiences this ecstasy. So the stage before the ecstatic stage is attachment, and using poetic language, if you remember, it's likened to a cluster, just like during this spring season, all kinds of things happen with trees. So clusters of little buds appear at the end of the twigs of some of the trees. It's the buds indicate very soon the flowers are going to come. So this is the flower stage. It's springtime in the spiritual world, where the stage of Bhava appears, the flowering of supreme bliss. So I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, not so much analytically, because it's much sweeter than analytical will do it justice. His language, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's language, Bhava is the blossoming flower of the creeper of bhakti with an outer and inner luster. The outer and inner have these 2 features. Those of you that are familiar with Nectar of Devotion, Chapter 1, there's 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. We mentioned the first 2 correspond with sadhana bhakti. The next 2, this is, number 3 in the list of 6, rarely achieved. Su durlabha. Durlabha is rarely achieved, and su means very, very rarely achieved. And moksha moksha laghu takrit, deriding even the conception of liberation. So the conception of liberation, what that refers to is the realization the conception of liberation that we belong to the category of spirit. I am part of the realm of spirit. I'm not this temporary body. So there's a theory, and then there's the realization of that, and the realization of that is insignificant compared to the ecstasy of devotion and love. He also then says this Bhava stage, it brings one into the Shuddha Sattva platform. Again, as a new person, what does that mean? There's material nature, and one of the topics in Bhagavad Gita is about the modes. Right? You familiar with that? The modes of material nature? Yeah? Okay, good. The modes of material nature. So, the bottom one, darkest one, is mode of ignorance. A little bit above that, mode of passion. A little bit above that is goodness. That makes three. Ignorance, passion, goodness. According to Bhagavad Gita, even in the mode of goodness, goodness may be prominent, but the other modes are there. Like dominant and recessive, like genes, dominant. So mode of goodness may be dominant, but the other two are there. And they're competing for supremacy. It's a material world. Everyone's got to compete in the material world, otherwise you're a loser. So you got to compete. They're competing for supremacy. And so even where there's a mode of goodness person, no. Ignorance and passion are also there, and they're competing for supremacy. It's just how the modes work. Now there's this spiritual realm where there's no ignorance and passion. There's no competition. What's that like? Well, get to the Bhava Bhakti stage and you'll find out, because there's no ignorance and passion. It's Shuddha, means good, pure goodness, no mixture. That's the spiritual world. One is in contact directly, or the Bhava ushers one to that realm, the spiritual realm. No modes of nature. What's that like? You got to go there and find out. Bhakti at that stage brings one to the no modes of nature position. He also says 1 atom of bhava totally uproots ignorance. So it's gone, not only temporarily gone, permanently gone. From the very root, ignorance is taken away. And then he again uses poetic language. While the profuse release of fragrances from the flower of bhava invites the bee. That's Krishna. Because one of Krishna's names is Madhu Sudana. Madhu in Sanskrit means bee. And bees like honey. Where do they get the honey? From flowers. So Krishna, when he sees his devotee has reached this bhava stage, Krishna comes. Seeking the honey. And the devotee in the bhava stage is seeking Krishna. So they're both really happy. Krishna's happy. The devotee is very happy. And then Krishna appears. And there's this wonderful description which I'll read, which is poetic, but it describes the stage where one is so eager to experience Krishna. Then suddenly Krishna appears and the devotee goes mad and they run for Krishna and Krishna disappears. And they go mad again. Where'd he go? I'll read. It's very nice. Maybe it's not in this translation. Is that possible? Maybe that's the case. Well, from memory, the devotee is walking through a forest and he sees a deer standing. How deers do that sometimes. They just stand motionless. And the devotee is thinking, he must see Krishna. And then the deer suddenly runs. And he thinks, that's an indication Krishna has gone that way. So he goes, because he's seeing everything in relation to Krishna. Everything. Then the deer must be feeling great sadness in separation from Krishna, because he's feeling some separation from Krishna. Where did Krishna go? Eager to see Krishna. Seeing all things, in short, seeing all things in relation to this object, because the previous stage is attachment to the object. Maybe it's in the previous section. The previous section? Okay. At times, wandering in the forest, full of love, he'll intuitively interpret the natural movements of animals and birds as signs of Krishna's favor or disfavor with him. Quote, if Krishna is showing his mercy on me, then the deer in the distance will come towards me 3 or 4 steps. If he isn't, she'll turn and run away. Another, on the outskirts of a village, seeing a small boy playing, who reminds him of one of the childhood saints, Sanat Kumar, he'll inquire from him, will I see Brajendranandana Krishna? Little boy playing, reminding him of Krishna. No. Hearing that simple syllable, he'll deliberate on whether to take the answer on face value or seek a deeper meaning. At times, he remained in his house like a very wealthy but miserly merchant, greedy for treasure. Where shall I go? What should I do? How will I get my hands on my desired object? Like a greedy person may be thinking. With a worn face, he'll be lost all day in thought like this while dreaming, standing, or sitting. When asked by his relatives, what's the matter? He'll sometimes act like a mute. And at other times, feigning normalcy, he hides his inner feelings. His friends will apologize. He's become a little scatterbrained. His neighbors will conclude he's an idiot by birth. The followers of the karma mimamsa philosophy, that is, work as worship, will think him a fool. Those who study Vedanta will consider him illusioned. The practitioner of pious activities will say he's misguided. The devotees will say he's attained the essential truth. The offenders will say he's a pretender. But that devotee, oblivious to honor and dishonor, having fallen into the current of the great celestial river of attachment to the Lord, simply continues in the same manner because he's attached, indifferent to the temporal circumstances. So these are very unusual, as it says, rarely attained stages. The topmost stages of spiritual life. The perfume of the flower of Bhava melts all emotions in the heart. Just the heart becomes so soft. And extreme emotions, all in relation to the object of affection, Krishna. And temporary objects, don't hold attraction. They may have in the past, but they don't hold attraction anymore. There's only one. The loving relation of the supreme form of Krishna. And all of one's senses crave contact with Krishna. So what can we say about these things except recite what our great acharyas have to say about them? In the Sanskrit language, our acharyas commonly use or interchange the word rati with bhava. And then, as he does with each of the chapters, the I and mine conception, the material ego, and to the degree to which that's dissolved and replaced with the spiritual conception. So this I conception, he writes, it's as if it enters into the Siddha Deha. Siddha Deha is a spiritual body. So we have this gross physical body. We have a subtle mind, intelligence, and false ego body. And then there's the spiritual body, which isn't developed at our present stage, but when this Bhava stage, the I conception in his language enters into that spiritual body that's suitable for their desire to serve Krishna. What that means is, as previously discussed, there are different rasas. The next chapter we're going to hear about rasas. So supposing one is a friend of Krishna, so his spiritual form will be a young male boy. Spiritual form, not a material one. Or a tree, or a cow, or a peacock, or something. A gopi, cowherd girl, or something. So that spiritual conception, just that we're accustomed to our material conception of who we are. So that becomes so spiritualized it enters into the spiritual body. And the material body remains, but it acts differently, and the feelings and desires also are different, quite different. Then the mine conception is one's relationship with Krishna, seeking, like a bee, seeking Krishna's association, the nectar of the lotus feet of Krishna. In the very beginning, chapter 1, we heard about the absolute independence of Krishna, and like that, Krishna's potency is as independent as Krishna is absolutely independent. So his own potency, this word sva, rupa, sva means his own, and rupa means form. His own, the spiritual potency of the spiritual world, of the original form of God, has these different features. I mean, this isn't a subject matter for a new person, what to do. That's our topic for tonight. So, Sandini, Samvit, Ladini, these three indicate the potency of existence in the spiritual realm, the potency of knowledge in the spiritual realm, the potency of ecstasy or spiritual happiness, pleasure, in the spiritual realm. And everything here is a reflection of that. As above, so below. You've heard that phrase. So there's variegatedness in the kingdom of God. And it's all spiritual. Here, there's variegatedness, but it's just a reflection of that variegatedness. But it doesn't have the same substance, just like an object, here's an apple, and here's a mirror. So in the mirror, there's the reflection of the apple. Looks like an apple, but there's no substance, just a reflection. In fact, you just turn the mirror a little bit and the reflection's gone. Now there's a reflection. So the substance here isn't. The substance is there in the spiritual realm. This sambit, this word, means substantial, eternally existing. Here there's nothing that's eternally existing. Everything is ever-changing. In the spiritual world, everything is eternally existing. It's quite different. Everything there in the spiritual realm is filled with knowledge in and of itself. It's not an object of knowledge, it is knowledge. And here, everything that's ignorant, the chair, the body may appear to have some knowledge only because of the presence of the soul. The soul's gone. There's no knowledge inherent in matter. In the spiritual realm, everything is filled with knowledge. It's very different. And there everything is, by its very nature, filled with ananda or bliss. So this bhava stage is it's the immature budding stage. Almost there, the fullness of Krishna's internal potency. And then one of our favorite topics in this audience is the distinctions between raga bhakti and sadhana bhakti. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is a raga bhakta. He's on the spontaneous attraction for Krishna stage. So, he describes the bhava at this raga or spontaneous devotion to Krishna stage, thick, intense. The tendency towards awe and reverence towards the Supreme. It's not there. Rather, it's this intimacy or sweetness. And there's a second kind of bhava, that which develops from Vaidhi bhakti, which the author, Vishwanath, says its quality and its quantity are less than the quality and quantity of spontaneous raga bhakti. Again, these are very elevated subject matters. As a new person, my apologies for the 6th time. What to do? So let me just go a little bit. There's persons who can come to the stage of love for Krishna by following rules and regulations. That's one kind. And there's another kind where different causes, but one may come to the spontaneous love. Spontaneous love. Not because I'm supposed to and I follow rules, just spontaneous love. Spontaneous devotion. That's 2 different types. That's what the message is here. And I think this is the last slide. Description of bhava. As mentioned, the Sarup Shaktis, the spiritual potencies of Krishna, become, one is at the threshold of experiencing Krishna's form and his spiritual potencies intimately in their fullness. It's like in the morning, the beginning rays of the morning sun, before there's the full sun makes its appearance. Again, these same Sanskrit terms, sudulabha, rarely achieved. The devotee in the bhava stage derides even the conception of liberation. These are just repeats of messages already given. The fragrance from bhava causes Krishna to appear. Emotions of the heart become like sesame oil. This is again another metaphor. Sesame oil is a very light kind of oil, smeared on Krishna's limbs. It's a metaphor. When emotions are being directed towards Krishna's form. Eyes are directed toward Krishna. Hankering for Krishna manifests tears to hear the sound of Krishna's flute and so forth. Those of you that are familiar a little bit with nectar of devotion know these terms. These different bhavas are there. Sanchari bhav, one's intelligence becomes fixed upon Krishna. The sense of self, I conception, enters into the spiritual form. Then rasa begins to awaken. If you remember that chart that I showed yesterday from Bhava Swami, remember that chart? So the beginning stages of the Madhyama Adhikari extends up to the beginning stages, and the Uttama Adhikari stage continues in the later stages of Bhava into Prema. Anyway, and one who is experiencing this ecstasy doesn't go parade it. Check me out, I have ecstasy. Rather, one holds it internally, but it can't be completely contained. And common people think that this person is mad. Okay, so I'm going to do this really quickly. This is just, he presents it, so I'm presenting it. There's steady ecstasy, sthai bhav. Vibhav means special symptoms that cause ecstasy. I was going to take the time and put it in a chart. I'm not going to do it. It's too... The detail is wonderful if this was a different audience, I think. Then there's bodily symptoms which express the inner feelings of love. Vyabhichari bhav, anubhav, symptoms that directly express their love for Krishna. The devotee's response to stimulations of love for Krishna. And sattviki bhav, constitutional or existential ecstasy. Anyway, you can read Nectar Devotion. And read it at least 20 times so that you can understand it. And then you'll read the explanations of that, and then eventually you can understand it. Here's how rasa develops. He touches on this. There's this bhavas in 5 different varieties, and there's different sweetnesses within those different varieties, and it's likened to different fruit juices that have different thicknesses. And then rasa is the initial one, sthai bhav, steady ecstasy, mixed together with the other 4. In case you want to make a juice, have a juice bar. This is the rasa juice bar. Take some sthai bhav and put in a blender with the other 4 bhavas, and you get different different rasas. Hare Krishna. He gets to the same point where he was in chapter 1, that rasa is the essence, if you remember. Rasa Sarup, or Rasa Raj. These are terms that identify Krishna's position. He's the basis of all rasa. He is all rasa. He is Rasa Sarup, the rasa himself. That's Krishna. And when in this bhava stage begins to experience their rasa. And he concludes saying, all the avatars have some rasa, and some have more than others, and Krishna exhibits the maximum perfection of rasa. Very elevated subject matter. I think this is the last slide. The I and mine, spiritualized, be all-pervasive. Here's the Sanskrit term, atyantiki. The sense of material significance in one's life, it's just an empty shadow. And the mind is deeply absorbed in not only thinking of Krishna, but seeing Krishna. That's a whole subject. Very wonderful subject in Brihat Bhagavatamrita about meditation, that the Lord appears. Any object that before you see an object, you see within your mind before you see within the eyes. It's a whole thing. So the mind is a place where Krishna appears, as we know from other discussions on meditation. Dhruva saw the form of the Lord in his mind or in his heart before he saw him standing before him, etc. Okay, we're almost done. It's very elevated subject matter. It's hard to do this. His subtitle is Fulfillment of the Heart's Desire. This is the final, the cluster of buds, the opening of the flower, and the fragrances of the flower. Madhusudana Krishna appears on that flower to gather the honey, the sweetness of the ecstasy of the devotee in ecstasy. And then the final, from the flower, the fruit. The goal of all the activities of bhakti is to come to the stage of pure love. And that's what this term means, prema. You heard that term before, prema? Prema means pure love, spiritual, nothing material, pure transcendental love. Then these are the last two of the 6 characteristics found in chapter 1, Nectar Devotion. Sandrananda. So ananda is a word that we heard before. Bliss. Sandrananda. Incalculable bliss. Bliss beyond description, beyond imagination, you can't even think of it. That's how much blissful is that stage of prema. And then the 6th, what happened here? Yeah, the only means of attracting Krishna. Krishna, Karshini. The only means of attracting Krishna is love for Krishna. And Krishna becomes attracted by that love. He becomes submissive, subordinate to the love, just as a lover and beloved. When it's genuine, pure love, the person who is receiving the love of another becomes purchased by that love of the beloved, becomes subordinate to the love of the beloved. But the beloved isn't thinking, I'm going to control. They're thinking love. And the beloved is thinking such love from this person. And so that tendency that we have, where does that come from? It comes from God. So that's Krishna, Karshini. It attracts the all-attractive. Krishna means the all-attractive. And the all-attractive is attracted by prema, by love. It's a contradiction of terms. It may even seem like just like clever juggling of words, but it's transcendental reality. So, the qualities of prema, he describes, it transforms material emotions into spiritual emotions. It has the power to attract Krishna, devotee loses the sense of self-consciousness, like, I'm at the center consciousness. Think about that for a moment. Think about it a whole lot for more than a moment. Each of us in material consciousness, who's at the center of our consciousness? Each one of us. We're like these little lights, and we're at the center. And prema is we're no longer at the center. You lose that. So what's at the center? Krishna's at the center. We're still conscious, but consciousness becomes so absorbed in love that Krishna's at the center. And that's what our consciousness is, Krishna consciousness, where Krishna's fully at the center. It's most amazing. There's anxiety for his vision, his darshan. There's realization of Krishna's form, and then his pastimes, and his personal sweetness. And, well, I'm going to read this one. I can't just show you in slides. Fasten your seatbelts. We're about to take off. If you pass out, there's an oxygen mask that will fall from the sky, and here we go. The very astonishing, I'm reading on page 46. The very astonishing prema simultaneously gives acute anxiety and relief from this anxiety. First, arising in its reservoir in the heart and slightly increasing, prema pierces the devotee like a shaft, with ardent longing to see Krishna at every moment. Then, the searing heat of the fire of this anxiety burns the shaft to ashes, relieving the devotee's pain by causing a sudden vision, spurti, of the Lord in his heart, relishing the Madhurya of the Lord's form and pastimes. He still remains unsatiated, and his longing for the Lord again increases. In this state, he considers friends as useless, as a dry, overgrown well. We don't have that experience in the West, but it used to be useful. Go get water from the well, but now it's overgrown and grass-covered, and his household becomes like a thorn-filled forest. Food seems totally distasteful. Praise from other devotees is like the biting of a snake. Daily duties seem as painful as death. All the limbs of his body seem like an unmanageable burden. The consolidation of his comrades is like poison. The consolation. Though he remains constantly awake, wakefulness is like a sea of repentance. And if sleep does come, it seems like full of mortal anguish. His body seems the target of chastisement. And breathing in and out seems like as fruitless as sowing roasted grains. That's what we're hankering for, right? We must be crazy. What more can be said? What were always his favorite things before are now abandoned as great calamities. Even thinking of the Lord seems to tear his body asunder. Then, one day, in this state, the magnet of prema attracts the black iron-like Krishna, making him appear before the eyes of the devotee. The Lord then floods his devotee's senses with the unrivaled auspicious qualities springing from his own eternal being: beauty, fragrance, pleasant voice, tenderness, tastiness, generosity, and compassion. the uncommon sweetness and ever freshness of these qualities create an acute, ever-increasing longing in the heart as the devotee lovingly relishes them. To describe the vast ocean of the transcendental bliss appearing at this time, the words of the poet are no better than a tiny lota. Lota is a little vessel. Some meager examples can be given. A traveler on a desert path, scorched by the hot rays of the summer sun, somehow finds shelter under the cool shade of a vast banyan tree, densely tangled with branches and surrounded with hundreds of vessels of ice-cold Ganga water. An elephant caught in a forest fire for a long time is finally bathed by the unlimited streams of water from a thick bank of rain clouds. A person plagued by hundreds of mortal diseases and burning with thirst by chance drinks exquisitely sweet nectar. The incredible happiness that each of these three feels gives only a tiny glimpse of the unbounded bliss felt by the devotee in prema. Okay. The Lord first reveals his beauty, Saundarya, to the eyes of the utterly astonished devotee. The sweetness of his beauty makes all the senses and the mind become like eyes to see the Lord. The resulting symptoms of ecstatic love, such as tears, shivering, and being stunned, cause the devotee to swoon in ecstasy. He faints. To revive him, the Lord next reveals his fragrance, Saurabhya, to the nostrils of his devotee. And all the devotee's senses and mind take on the quality of the nose to smell. As the devotee starts to swoon, means faint, a second time, the Lord says, "Oh, my devotee, I am fully under your control. Please don't be disturbed. Just realize me to your full satisfaction." The Lord thus discloses his pleasing voice, Sau Svarya, to the ear of his devotee. And as before, all the senses become like ears to hear. That's 3 senses so far. As the devotee swoons a third time, the Lord mercifully gives him the touch of his lotus feet, hands, or breast, revealing his delicate softness according to the different rasas of the devotees. It goes into detail. Again, the devotee's senses all take on the sense of touch to feel his softness. As the start of the 4th swoon, the Lord restores him by giving his 5th Madhurya, the taste of the nectar of his lips. But this he reveals only to those who, at this time, are in the mood of conjugal love and desire this, but not to others. The devotee's senses all take on the sense of taste, and he faints for a 5th time. This blissful swoon is so deep, the Lord can revive him only by bestowing his 6th quality, Audarya, generosity. Audarya refers to the state where all the Lord's qualities, beauty, fragrance, sound, touch, and taste, forcefully manifest at once in his devotee's various senses, like circuit overload. Then prema, understanding the mind of the Lord, increases to the utmost, and with it the keen hankering of the devotee. Prema becomes like a powerful moon in the heart of the devotee, presiding over the ocean of bliss and creating hundreds of waves. It causes an almost destructive friction in the devotee's heart among the competing tastes. At the same time, as the presiding deity in the mind, the moon of prema, expands its power and allows the devotee to relish all the different tastes at the same time without conflict. One should not think that due to lack of single-mindedness, the devotee will be unable to relish the fullness of all the various tastes. Rather, the sense is attaining the extraordinary, inconceivable, wonderfully amazing capacity to do the functions of all the other senses, even more fully savor the Madhurya, the sweetness of the Lord's beauty, His pleasant voice, and other qualities. Mundane logic is useless in these inconceivable manners. Seeing the devotee yearning to relish the Saudharya and other sweet qualities of the Lord all at once, but helpless, like a chataka bird trying to catch every raindrop at once in his beak, the Lord considers, oh, why am I keeping so many wonderful qualities to myself? To let the devotee partake of them all, the Lord manifested seventh sweetness, karunya, or compassion, the superintendent of all the Lord's Shaktis. She reigns as a supreme empress in the middle of a lotus, on whose 8 surrounding petals are the 8 Shaktis mentioned here. This karunya, also known as anugraha, kindness or favor, manifests itself in the lotus eyes of the Lord to His devotees in the mood of servant. It is known as Kripa Shakti. To His others, it is Vatsalya, and sometimes Karunya. When it appears in relation to His devotees in conjugal mood, it is known as Chitta Vidravani, Akarshini Shakti, that melts the heart of Krishna and attracts him. Anyway, this is pretty high science, isn't it? He exhibits His mercy, in short, on the devotee. And they realize His most outstanding quality, at the bottom of the page, His affection. That's the crowning glory of the Supreme Lord. So, in case you wanted to know what prema is like, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is describing for us. So this is first the Lord's beauty, then the Lord's voice, then His fragrance, and then His touch, and then taste, and then there's His generosity, and then His compassion. You get the full package on the transcendental plane of love. And we're just going to go through this very quickly. Okay. Yeah. These are some of the aspects of His mercy. Kripa means mercy. These are the Sanskrit terms. And it appears in different forms. So this outstanding quality is Krishna's affection for His devotees. It rules over all of the other qualities of Krishna. Even simultaneous contrary qualities become manifest in the Lord for the pleasure of His devotees. And the devotee gets overwhelmed by all of that. And then Krishna says, I am conquered by you. It's a dance. It's a transcendental. We heard that Ruchi is the dance instructress. Bhakti is, the bhakta in that stage is the dancer. So this is, Krishna's enjoying. It certainly sounds like the devotee is enjoying. But why is the devotee enjoying? Out of love, it's because Krishna's enjoying. Then Krishna reveals His place of His pastimes. Radha and her associates. Krishna's friends, His cows, the river Jamuna. All of these things become disclosed transcendentally within one's experience, palpably, and worldly people think this is totally crazy. And the devotee thinks the worldly people, they're really missing out. Krishna's associates, his relatives, his servants, the whole spiritual realm becomes revealed through the stage of prema. And then within the realm of prema, there's higher and higher and higher, in case you wanted to know what's next. As if there's something more than all of that. The heart melts upon beholding Krishna. This is, our acharyas are teaching us these things. One wishes to hide one's feelings of a tense infection, so one does crooked things like Radharani does. She exhibits anger towards Krishna. Man. One's life, body, mind, and intelligence all practically become one with Krishna's. Raga is in this prema stage, not the other kind of raga, material attraction, but spiritual raga, most intense feelings, hankering for Krishna's association at any cost, and even beyond that is anuraga. Even after there's association, one still feels unfulfilled, one wants more, greed. And his last comment is, this is not something one can even think of in the material mind or experience in a material body. It's fully on the spiritual body platform, spiritual reality. Prema Bhakti Ki Jai. Again, he does this little summary at the end of each chapter. The I and mind conceptions, it's not just complete, it's intense. And the material aspects, whatever one may have been concerned about, it's completely absent. As far as the mind is concerned, direct contact with Krishna at all times. And the devotee is wondering, was this just a dream? He rolls on the ground and faints. He sees Krishna everywhere, and then Krishna disappears, and he goes mad. He's reached the goal. There we go. There's Madhurya Kadambini. Krishna. Any questions? Discussion? Comments? Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. The question in all this is, what is in our current practice of Krishna consciousness, I'm just wanting to inquire about what is our goal? Is it that if one doesn't reach the prema stage
absolutely important
in one's lifetime, then he has to take birth again?
Do you want to take birth again?
No.
Okay, go for it. You got a cheerleader. That's the gift.
The subject matter seems so elevated, we hardly even talk about it.
It's very elevated, no doubt about it.
It's difficult to conceive that a successful life in devotion means attaining prema. I mean, obviously in one sense that's true, but realistically.
Well, if we want to get into it, we could say it's not realistic. It's just like high talk. It's not really meant to be taken as a real goal. It's just, it's just nice literature. It's not really a goal. So don't worry about it. It's not really a goal. It's a goal. It's the package. Just open the package, and that's what's inside. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. Isn't that all living entities? It's there, and it's just to awaken that. So, what's a realistic goal for us? Well, let's strive for unmixed devotion. And these things are the buds and the flowers and the fruit of unmixed devotion. That's what we heard, isn't it? So become attached to Krishna. That's a nice goal. The others follow. From that asakti, that's the buds. Become attached to Krishna. The rest is just, Krishna decorates. Krishna makes it happen. Just become attached to Krishna. Is that a realistic goal?
Maharaj, I heard from a devotee that when one attains the stage of Nishtha, that's when, he doesn't fall down from there, even if he doesn't complete his goal in his life.
Well, you can, but generally not. The meaning of Nishtha is, just as that verse, there's still some abhadras or anarthas there. But bhakti is so strong, they can't manifest.
Actually, I think I misspoke. I meant, when one gets nishtha, he actually remembers his previous lives because he's fixed in intelligence.
Well, it's overwhelmed by the strength of bhakti. Mm-hmm. But don't slacken, because if slackening happens, then it can go the other way.
Yeah.
That's the concern. The idea of nishtha is we don't slacken. But it's possible. Free will is there. We can slacken. You have something? No?
So currently we are focused on sadhana bhakti.
Thank you. You can.
But I've
you
also,
can let go of your seatbelts now. It's okay. Okay.
I have also heard that Prabhupada said that the ecstasy from chanting springs automatically from the spiritual platform. Can you elaborate what he means by automatically?
Yeah, in fact, if you remind me, and you're really good at reminding me when I ask you to remind me, so I know you'll do it. Remind me to send you a little article that Bhurijan Prabhu wrote as a GBC emeritus person to the GBC about that word automatically. It's a very nice essay, and very, like Bhurijan, very scripturally grounded, makes about 5 points that are logical one after the next, and it explains them in terms of scripture. In short, automatically may be thought of as a mechanical kind of automatically, and that's a misunderstanding. Rather, it comes as part of the process of bhakti that unfolds. And specifically, he indicates a very strong dose of hearing and chanting is part of the automatically. No, it's voluntary, it's ecstatic, it's uplifting and enlivening and thrilling kind of automatically. Voluntary submission, automatically. Lovingly, automatically. Not automatically. Like, vending machine automatically. Okay, over here then, behind you. Go ahead.
Sure. Maharaj,
You have these really intense questions, so my seatbelt's fastened right now. You have good questions, but they're real strong. I like them.
so Maharaj, you told that in the stage of Bhava, the mind is seeing Krishna. It comes and goes. Right?
Krishna.
Krishna comes and goes.
Yeah.
So, is that person, how he's behaving in his normal life when he come to the, how that person is reacting in the normal life? Suppose a person in a stage of Bhava, he has not attained the Siddha Deha, he's in a normal human body, he has not attained that.
Well, you heard. People think he's crazy. It's there. Have you read about the when Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda was coming with the devotees to Puri, and Lord Chaitanya pulled Lord Nityananda to the side and said, "My mother instructed me to stay here in Puri, so I can't spread love of God all over. So can you do that for me? Can you, when you go back to Bengal, don't come with all the devotees. Just spread love of God on my behalf all over Bengal." So it's separation, but some service. So he was like unhappy to be in separation, but happy to have service. And then he said another thing. He said, "And I would like you to become married." And Lord Nityananda, he's an avaduta. What's an avaduta going to do to get married? He said, "Why are you punishing me like this? All of your dearest associates, they're renunciates." And Lord Chaitanya's reply was, "I just see you that way." So he went back and he was to be married. And the two daughters, Suryadas, Sarakale, and Lord Nityananda, there was a go-between kind of person to make a marriage, and Lord Nityananda would like to marry one of your daughters. How's he going to maintain a wife? He's an avaduta. But he couldn't say no. He couldn't say yes. So they married. And married both daughters. It's a long, nice story. So how's he gonna live an ordinary life? Well, he didn't live an ordinary life. But he had a son. Something happened. But it was, a transcendental pastime. So, people that are on such an elevated stage, they don't lead an ordinary life. Srinivasacharya, amongst the three that are the students of Jiva Goswami, the most eminent, exalted amongst them, he had 2 wives, because that was requested of him. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had 10 children. He wasn't an ordinary person. To think of him as an ordinary person would be, to put it mildly, a big mistake. So each person, each devotee on elevated platform, they exhibit their elevatedness according to the indication of the Supreme Lord. But they're not, however they lead their ordinary lives, they're not ordinary persons.
Love question.
Okay. It's going to be easier than the first one, right?
The person is at the Nishtha stage.
Nishtha?
Nishtha stage.
Okay.
He has got some conception of his Ishtadev. Suppose he entered the temple first time in the ashram, and he doesn't know anything of Krishna consciousness. He stay over here for 5, 6, 10 years, and so he has got a clear conception. Okay, this is my Ishtadev now. And then he go to Vrindavan or he go to Mayapur, and he get attracted by Radha Madhav or Radha Shyam Sundar or Krishna Balram, then is it a kind of a breaking law? Because he's attracted to now Krishna Balram over there. So is breaking law, changing the Istadev, or it's a quite agreeable case?
These are transcendental things. It's not, rules don't follow. You know, what you're presenting is hypothetical, supposing something. You know, these are affairs of the heart, and when the heart is actually given, you don't take it back. But how do these things work when they're on the transcendental platform? Here's a scriptural reference. When Madhavendra Puri was sent by Gopal to get chandan and camphor because of the heat of the summer in Vrindavan, on his way back, Gopal appeared to him in a dream and said, just apply to Gopinath, because we're the same. Now on transcendental affairs, who can, you know, we can't use yardsticks like we're accustomed to. It's just a different set of rules. And, you know, and then from person to person, it's, you know, the relationship with Krishna is unique. We don't transgress etiquettes, but at the same time, the Ishtadev and so forth, that's Gopal Bhatta Goswami, when he was young, he worshipped Ranganath. And when he went to Vrindavan, Lord Chaitanya became his Ishtadev, and you know, the deity of Radharaman. These are matters of the heart for transcendentalists to sort out, not for us to sit, pull our chin on. That's it. You follow what I'm saying? It's a transcendental exchange on a higher platform. You have a question? It's on. It's on. You're on. Yeah. Uh-huh. We need something stronger than? I'd be interested to hear the lecture in the context of what he said. Okay.
If we continue this way in book distribution, very soon you will go back home to Godhead. So throughout your lecture, I have this very strong desire to really, be nice to attain this goal. And I'm getting kind of old, and I'm looking for the most for sure, best, quickest, easiest process. Another thing Prabhupada's talking about, if you do this book distribution, you're very quickly recognized by Krishna. So I would just like to know your thoughts on, is this really the fast track that you're going to get to maybe make some extra progress here?
Well, to say yes doesn't nullify other things. To say yes to what you're saying does not mean that one who becomes fully absorbed in the worship of the deity, life and soul, is not on the fast track. Or the person who is absorbed in the holy name is not on the fast track. So one thing doesn't nullify the other things. It's like this, the big picture message from this morning's class. I mean, Kal Krishna Das, he just had faith in the principle of take the remnants of prasad from the Vaishnavas. He received mercy from Lord Chaitanya that nobody received mercy. He was on a fast track, just taking the prasad of all the Vaishnavas of Bengal. That's a lot of Vaishnavas during Lord Chaitanya's time. Implicit faith in one of these items of bhakti, and combination of them. Fast track. It doesn't diminish, to say that doesn't diminish another, the statement that you made. But, it's very important as we mature in Krishna consciousness to respect the faith and the growth of bhakti of others that have another faith and another service and another connection with Krishna that's part of the unlimitedness of Krishna. Now, did Prabhupada give special emphasis upon book distribution? Yes. Wait till Vaisheshika Prabhu comes out with his book. But we're going to hear in that book, at least he shared with me, that the co-position that Prabhupada gave for Harinam and book distribution. Not like, this one over that one, like there's some kind of competition, or that one over this one, there's some kind of competition. We'll see how he presents it. I'm sure it'll be very elegant and eloquent. Someone else? Question, comment? Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question from Acharya Nishta Prabhu's question, the answer that you gave.
Follow-up question.
Yes. You said that we should start by aspiring to be attracted to Krishna, but it seems like that is also very difficult. What could be one step lower to, because there seems to be so many different things that we, at least I feel, attracted to before getting attracted to Krishna. So my question is to ask, where can we, what could be one step lower to getting attracted to, fully getting attracted to Krishna, leaving other things and just think about Krishna?
I think I get the drift of your question, but the detail I didn't get. Someone can help me? Did you get it? The detail? Can you do it again?
Question?
Just the last part, not the whole thing.
Yeah.
There's the attachment,
me,
and you see that's a very high goal.
Yes.
Then the question is, how do we get there?
Yes.
That's the question?
Yes.
Step by step.
Yes.
That's
So
how.
I'm asking what are the different steps?
So chant attentively. That's the first step.
Yes.
And that means don't let your mind wander. Uh-oh. That's a pretty high goal, Maharaj. Can you make it easier? Well, you put that at the center, and then you try to do the other things. Your deity worship nicely, serve the devotees lovingly, hear from the scripture, and then put your hand in your bead bag again. And the mind wanders. Okay. So create an atmosphere, a chamber, an incubation chamber, a way of qualitatively how you're interacting in the other areas of bhakti, so that one becomes stronger. So all of those are to help that one become stronger. According to the Bhaktivinoda Thakur and our other acharyas, inattentiveness is the root of all of the offenses. Attentiveness is the cure. So attentiveness to chanting, when chanting, the others are attendants or assistants to that. So just, you practice. And you practice. Here's two two things that may make you feel better. I don't know. You heard that before this description, Giriraj Maharaj sitting with Prabhupada chanting japa in Juhu. Prabhupada's quarters in Juhu, have you seen them? They're up on the top floor of one of those two towers. The whole floor is Prabhupada's quarters. So one day when you go to Juhu temple, ask, can you see the Prabhupada's quarters or Prabhupada museum? They'll take you up, and you'll see this a very large space. Prabhupada sitting at his table. This is before 6 o'clock in the morning, because at 6 o'clock he would go for his morning walk along the beach. Very famous, exchanges with Dr. Patel and everybody else. So Giriraj Maharaj was describing, they were seated upstairs early in the morning, and he felt like, this is the spiritual world. I'm here with Prabhupada, before the sun is rising and sitting with my spiritual master chanting the holy name, just the two of us. And chanting and chanting and chanting, absorbed like that. Then Prabhupada stopped. And he lifted his beads out of his bead bag, looked at Giriraj Maharaj and said, it has taken me 30 years to perfect my chanting. And Giriraj Maharaj thought, wow, 30 years, that's a long time. 30 years. And when he said it, he said, and now I've been chanting 35, 36 years, and I wish if only I could perfect my chanting after 30 years. Then another one, this I just heard from Madhurya Swami. He said, Bahalashva Prabhu, and it may have been when Prabhupada was, at one time he was the temple president in Chicago. Where did this conversation, anyway, I forget where the conversation took place. Maybe it was during our Western outreach thing. Anyway. Maybe during Prasadam or something. Anyway, he said, Bahalashva asked Prabhupada, how long does it take to perfect chanting? And Prabhupada paused, thought, said, maybe 40 years. It took him 30, maybe for you it'll take 40 years. Feel better? But it's not mechanical, it's not automatic, like a vending machine. Just hang around for 40 years and you'll become a perfect chanter, and you become attached to Krishna, and the other things that, all this nice premas thing will just happen. It's sincere endeavor for 40 years, maybe. So that's how long you have to bring the mind back to Krishna. Sincerely endeavor. And then the last message, I've shown it twice. The end of the Nishtha section, that little statement that says, the essence of all of this instruction is the effort to come to the stage. So it's the effort. The essence is the effort that you make. And the effort that you make is based upon a sincere desire to fulfill the purpose, or to receive the gift that Lord Chaitanya came to give. Not just do, but receive. Relationship, not fruitive, but relationship, bhakti. One who receives can then give. I think we'll end there. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki